So Danielson comes out. He is billed the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, and what a reaction for him. The atmosphere was unbelievable for just the two walking out. And when this belt...
It was very surreal to me. Like, I mean, it was one thing seeing Bryan Danielson come out in, like, I don't know, pants and a white t-shirt. It's another seeing him come out in his, like, you know, signature maroon trunks. Like, this is when it really sank in for me that, like, oh, I was seeing one of this show's main characters on this show now. And these are like feelings that I haven't had. I mean, you know, you have it with Punk, of course. You have it here, but these are feelings I never had since like the Monday Night Wars. You know, seeing one major character from one show jump to another, exactly looking exactly the same.
Yeah, it was. You know, sometimes we will just describe like an atmosphere. This is one you really do have to see because when the bell rings, this place, it was already like this sustained level. And then it went to another level when the bell rung and they just stood there and Danielson had the biggest smile on his face and they just took this in and it grew and grew. It was a sustained roar that was only topped by them locking up. And this was the biggest reaction you'd ever see a lockup get. And then booed when there was a breakup in the ropes.
These fans just wanted them to touch. There were definitely like big spurts of, you know, the you're gonna get your fucking head kicked in chant going here. And I was honestly impressed, like given how like non-existent that chant was throughout the WWE and how briefly Bryan might have mentioned it in some interviews this week, how much people jumped onto that chant. And it was not near, like, I would say even maybe, I don't know, would you even say 50% capacity at its peak? But it will be like in the weeks to come, no doubt about it.
Yeah. It starts and it's just, you know, they're just like going back and forth here, and this crowd is just into every little thing and just watching Danielson stomp the elbow. They worked up into chops. I will say, not like surprised at all, but it was just interesting to see the fact that the chops all elicited the same woos you would always expect, and it's not surprising to me.
I mean, at this point, the chops are kind of we always think of Flair, and he's the one who's popularizing them, and the reason why we're wooing. But it's almost disassociated now. It's almost just a natural reaction, like a reflex that you give when you see somebody do a chop.
Yeah, and I did not think that was going to change. It was more so just the fact that this is a fresh news story. And was that if you were performers, would you lean on the chops on a show like this, knowing that?
I would, honestly. Like we can maybe question the man's decisions, but I mean, this is ultimately a wrestling move. Yes, it's one he popularized, but it's also a staple of many professional wrestling matches and many people's professional wrestling movesets that I don't think about it too much personally. I doubt the wrestlers are.
Probably not. And I wouldn't even discourage as well from going that direction. It was more so just interesting to see how the crowd would react. Danielson's, he has noted the fact how easily he bruises and such. And my God, his chest was just a shade of red that it will make for an amazing Instagram post.
If he decides to take it, yeah. It looked like a terrible rash.
He lands a tope suicida to Omega, and then the elbow is sent into the post as Excalibur, who was fantastic in this match, is breaking down the label lock, which was taught to him by Neil Melanson. This was when Bryan was living in Vegas and training at Extreme Couture, and handed down by Gene LaBelle, and the focus being the shoulder. But Omega would take over. Omega was, I thought, just the most incredible, like, heel champion that was above this guy. How he's going to come into my company and think he can hang with me. I am the top guy. And he was just at such an elite level, pardon the pun. He was excellent in this match. The crowd is doing the yes chants, and then Bryan busts out a top rope Hurricane Rana. There's a Terminator dive, and after a series of roll-ups, Bryan Danielson applies cattle mutilation. And every 18 to 49-year-old male was just clutching their heart.
Yeah.
Benno is still unconscious from this spot.
I'm like almost shocked that like he never pulled this thing out. I mean, if he has like during his WWE run and I forget, then please forgive me. But
what would they have named it?
It doesn't matter. You the yes clutch. I don't know, whatever, like something goofy like that. But the fact that he like has held off on using this move regularly for such a long time, only to bring it out right now for the hardcore audience who remembers that ROH run or like his independent run, it was wonderful. It was just a sign that said like, I'm back, everybody.
So during the post match scrum that he did at All Out, part of Bryan's decision making came down to the fact that he loved WWE, but at times they overprotected me, and I want to go out there and I need some risk in my life. So this dude took a Snapdragon on the ramp.
Ooh.
Now, this is the one move in this match I could have done without. It was just, I understand, but this is the same guy that when he came back that one time told Brody Lee to just give me like a half Nelson onto my neck to test it out. Like there is
there's a precedent for concern.
Very much so. And I would also argue the fact that the immediate follow-up was that running V-trigger down the ramp that elicited as equal, if not louder, a reaction that I don't want to see this guy not get up from a Snapdragon off of a ramp.
So I personally feel like it's the sign of like good professional wrestling when something looks dangerous, but it might not be. And I'm not a pro wrestler, never taken a Snapdragon in my life, and I don't plan to. But I have a feeling this is one of those moves that probably he does not feel one bit, but it was something he probably feels no different than just doing a backwards roll really fast. I hope that's the case. But you're not wrong to be concerned. In interviews, Bryan has said, well, audiences might be my newer audiences might be surprised at how violent this match is, or how violent my new style is going to be. And I have a feeling he's going to want to compete with like the likes of like a Jon Moxley doing crazy shit, or like Kenny Omega doing crazy shit. And I have those concerns too. But I don't think this instance was that.
They have to go to a picture-in-picture. This is after 17 minutes of the match. And Danielson, he does sell the hell out of this throughout the break. There's a buckle bomb spot that more so landed towards the ropes. And then Omega goes for an avalanche Snapdragon, which, if you can say anything about the ramp spot, has put the audience into a place where they can buy that Danielson might take this because he's out of his mind. But he slides out and hits a belly to back off of the top. He's favoring his right arm that he lands on from the suplex. We go into near falls. The audience is electric and they break out into an AEW chant, which is becoming the norm when things hit a big level. It is AEW chants. And that was not something that kind of has organically grown over the past month or so during this new era of the company, is these chants.
I think they're very close to turning it into a Tony Khan chant. Tony's gonna kick your fucking head in. Like, yeah, no, this is a company that has built tremendous goodwill with its audience. Throughout its entire duration, but especially over the past several months. So yeah, no, it's to be expected.
Kenny does go for the Snapdragon off the top, hits it, but in a way where Danielson rotates to land on his chest. This gave me some comfort.
You listen, it's like, on the one hand, we might sound like, like his parents, or Vince McMahon being overly protective of the guy, but we all know like his history with concussions. One bad concussion in this man's career, I think, changes a whole lot. So I think we have a right to be overprotective parents.
So he goes for another V-trigger. One Winged Angel gets countered with a Bryan Danielson Poison Rana. And Danielson is kind of scraped up on the forehead here. He fires up with these awesome kicks. Busaiku knee is stopped with a power bomb. More big near falls. Omega misses a Phoenix splash that Excalibur instantly recalls to the last time he tried this was the Lights Out match with Jon Moxley 2 years ago. The LaBelle Lock is stopped, and the final minute, we hit the 29-minute mark. Justin Roberts clearly gets onto the house mic for all of us to hear the time, but you can't hear him, and it's pretty clear that the audience did not hear him either. Excalibur is giving the update on the time, which they had announced was a 30-minute time limit, and they are just on their knees swinging. And suddenly the bell rings at 30 minutes, and my only thing was like, man, this crowd, like, just, they're upset because the match is over. Not in, like, a negative sense, but I think if they had been able to hear the 1 minute remaining, it would have, number one, that was the intention. I just think it would have been more of a dramatic end in the sense of them, like, almost counting down and such. But, I mean, what an unbelievable match. You could put this right along, I think, some of the best matches in AEW history, and I would say in Dynamite history, this is probably going to be people's number one.
It's so hard for me to like remember some of the others at the moment, but I mean, a lot of the ones I think in recent memory took place during the pandemic era. So outside of the pandemic era, absolutely.
This is going to get more remembered because of Danielson, because of the crowd. Like, that is going to put this one over the top, I think, for a lot of people when they're thinking. But it's, I thought it was just an incredible match.
I'm totally with you. I'm also with you about the countdown thing. I think the drama could have been heightened with a bit more attention called to the counting down. I think it must have been to them like a philosophical decision to not do the count. Like, New Japan might. Like, in New Japan, like, the guy actually, like, would say, like, we'll
you get the updates every 5 minutes.
1 minute, and then, like, 30 seconds, and then, like, 15 seconds, and then 10, 9, 8, 7, blah, blah, blah. I think that would have added a whole lot here.
I do, too.
But, maybe it was their creative decision to, like, not do it. And
well, I think they wanted Justin Roberts to announce it. It's just, I think there was a problem with, like, the audio that it didn't come out. Like, it just sounded muffled when he got on there.
But he didn't even... I only heard like 30 seconds or maybe it was like 1 minute. I don't know.
1 minute.
I didn't hear any attempts at updating it throughout. And that's when I think like you really have to ramp up the call towards the end. But how can you really complain so much about this match? Like,
you can't. I just felt bad that like this actually led to boos at the end, but it was
it's a natural reaction. People weren't booing the quality of the match; they're booing the fact that it was over.
It was over, right? And they wanted more, which is the desired reaction. That's the whole point of this match: is that you want to see the extended match and get to its conclusion. So this accomplished its goal and then some.
Completely, you got every bit of the dream match that I think people wanted. You knew this was going to go to a rematch anyway, everybody. This was not for the title. Like, in whatever happened here, you were going to get a rematch, and keeping it inconclusive enough, just like Shuri and Hayashi Shita, you built to a rematch just like that very easily. It was 30 minutes of magic, and the match itself was like actually quite basic. Both guys work on each other's body parts, but it was the star power of the two and the chemistry between the two that was what made it. And this crowd and this atmosphere were just amazing. Bryan did in an interview talk about maybe an enhanced level of aggression and violence. I noticed a bit of added aggression, but to be quite honest, I think towards the end of his WWE run, he was already showing a bit of that. So I can't really say that I noticed too much of a drastic different style from Bryan Danielson here compared to his WWE self.
I thought this was a much more like dangerous match in terms of just certain elements of it that, I mean, Bryan, like, you could see that certainly with some of like the Roman matches that I think you were seeing elements of this, but this, I don't know, this to me did feel like you were very much removed from like your restrictions that you would have in WWE.
In terms of maybe some of the spots he took from Kenny, yeah, maybe I would agree with that. And of course, we got the return of the cattle mutilation. But I also feel like this is the Bryan that is fresh off of 10 plus years, or how long was he in the WWE? 10 years?
It's 2009 with the brief tie firing.
Right, that's right. 10 plus years in the WWE. I think we are going to get a better Bryan Danielson in the weeks and months to come as he gets, more accustomed to like modern guys like a Daniel Garcia or a Darby Allin. And so whenever they plan on doing this rematch, I actually think they'll probably have a better match than this.
This was pretty to come out and do a hard 30 with Kenny Omega at this level. This was exceptional, and I would be very interested to hear his thoughts about this experience, because I go back to that interview he did a few months ago, and forgive me, I forget where he had stated this was when he went out for WrestleMania this year. He's in the main event and he felt nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would be very curious to see what this experience was like, because I imagine it did not seem like this guy was walking out and not feeling anything.
He mentioned he was nervous for this, like, more so than anything in his post-retirement run. So, I hope he has plenty more of these experiences to come.